The alarm clock buzzed at 6 a.m. sharp, just like it had every morning for the past 3 years. Dr. Amelia Richardson rolled over and smiled, still getting used to waking up in her beautiful new bedroom. The sunlight streamed through the large windows, casting warm patterns across the hardwood floors she had dreamed of having since law school. 6 months ago, this moment would have seemed impossible. After years of living in a tiny apartment and eating ramen noodles while paying off her student loans, she finally owned a home in Riverside Heights. It wasn't just any neighborhood either. This was the kind of place where successful people lived, with tree-lined streets and well-maintained lawns that looked like something out of a magazine. Amelia stretched and got out of bed, already excited about her morning jog. Exercise had always been her way of clearing her mind before big cases, and this week was huge. She was representing a family in a civil rights case that could change everything for people in similar situations. The legal briefs were ready, her arguments were solid, and she felt confident about winning. She pulled on her favorite running outfit, black leggings, a bright blue athletic top, and the running shoes she had saved up for months to buy. They were worth every penny, making her feel like she could run for miles without getting tired. As she tied her laces, she caught sight of herself in the mirror and felt proud. All those years of hard work, studying until 2 a.m., working 3 jobs during law school, it had all led to this moment. Stepping outside, she took a deep breath of the crisp morning air. The neighborhood was just waking up. A few houses had lights on in their kitchen windows, and she could smell coffee brewing somewhere nearby. This was exactly the kind of peaceful morning routine she had always wanted. She started with a gentle warm-up walk, admiring the houses around her. Each one had its own character. Some were modern with clean lines and large glass windows. Others were more traditional with brick facades and white picket fences. The lawns were perfectly manicured, and many had flower gardens that added splashes of color to the street. As she began jogging, she put in her earbuds and started listening to her favorite podcast about constitutional law. The host was discussing a recent Supreme Court decision, and Amelia found herself mentally taking notes for her own cases. This was what she loved about being a lawyer. The law was always evolving, always presenting new challenges and opportunities to fight for justice. The rhythm of her footsteps on the sidewalk was soothing. Left, right, each step taking her further into her peaceful morning routine. She had mapped out the perfect route through the neighborhood that took about 30 minutes and gave her a good workout without being too strenuous before a busy day at the office. She waved to Mrs. Patterson, an elderly woman who was already outside watering her roses. Mrs. Patterson had been one of the first neighbors to welcome her to the area, bringing over a homemade apple pie and sharing stories about the neighborhood's history. It was nice to feel like she belonged somewhere after years of feeling like an outsider. Turning onto Maple Street, her favorite part of the route, Amelia admired the huge oak trees that created a natural canopy over the road. In the fall, she imagined these trees would be absolutely stunning with their changing leaves. She was looking forward to experiencing her first full year in this neighborhood, seeing how it changed with the seasons. The podcast host was now discussing a case very similar to one she had worked on last year. She smiled, remembering how nervous she had been arguing her first major civil rights case. Now, just a few years later, she was known as one of the best civil rights attorneys in the city. Her colleagues often joked that she could argue constitutional law in her sleep. As she jogged past a beautiful house with a wraparound porch, she noticed a police car in her peripheral vision. It was moving slowly about half a block behind her. This wasn't unusual. Police often patrolled residential neighborhoods in the morning, making sure everything was safe before people headed to work. She continued her jog, turning left at the corner as her usual route dictated. The police car turned left too. Again, nothing too strange about that. They were probably just doing their regular patrol rounds. Riverside Heights was known for being a safe neighborhood, but that didn't mean the police didn't do their job of keeping an eye on things. But as she continued running, she noticed the car was still behind her. When she turned right onto Oak Avenue, the car turned right too. When she slowed down to check her fitness tracker, the car slowed down as well. A small knot began forming in her stomach, though she tried to convince herself it was just a coincidence. The morning was still peaceful around her. A jogger passed by going the other direction and nodded hello. A man was walking his golden retriever, and the dog wagged its tail as she jogged past. Everything seemed normal, except for that police car that seemed to be following her every move. She decided to test her suspicions. Instead of continuing straight on her usual route, she turned left onto a street she rarely used. The police car turned left too. Her heart rate was starting to increase, and it wasn't from the exercise. She had heard stories like this before, stories that usually didn't end well. Taking a deep breath, she reminded herself of who she was and what she knew. She was Dr. Amelia Richardson, a Harvard Law graduate, a successful civil rights attorney, and a homeowner in this very neighborhood. She had every right to be here, every right to jog on these public sidewalks. There was nothing suspicious about a woman exercising in her own neighborhood, but as she turned another corner and saw the police car still following her, she realized that her rights and her accomplishments might not matter to whoever was in that car. The knot in her stomach grew tighter as she remembered all the cases she had worked on, all the clients who had been in similar situations. She slowed to a walk and then stopped completely, pretending to retie her shoelace while she thought about what to do. The police car pulled over to the curb about 50 feet behind her. Through the windshield, she could see two officers inside, and they appeared to be having a conversation while looking directly at her. Standing up slowly, she tried to maintain her calm. She was a lawyer, she knew her rights, and she had done absolutely nothing wrong. She was simply a woman exercising in her own neighborhood on a beautiful morning. Whatever was about to happen, she would handle it with the dignity and knowledge that had gotten her through law school and built her successful career. The car doors opened, and two police officers stepped out. As they began walking toward her, Amelia Richardson prepared herself for a conversation she had hoped she would never have to have. The two officers approached her with a confidence that immediately put Amelia on edge. The older one, whose name tag read Martinez, had gray hair at his temples and the kind of walk that suggested he had been doing this job for many years. The younger officer, Thompson according to his badge, looked like he might be fresh out of the police academy, eager to prove himself. "Good morning, officers," Amelia said politely, removing her earbuds and trying to keep her voice steady. Years of courtroom experience had taught her the importance of staying calm under pressure, but this felt different. This was personal in a way that legal arguments never were. Officer Martinez stopped about 6 feet away from her, his hand resting casually on his utility belt. "We need to ask you a few questions," he said, his tone suggesting this wasn't really a request. "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Amelia felt her professional training kick in, reminding her to stay composed and factual. "I live here," she replied simply. "I'm out for my morning jog just like I do every day." Thompson snorted, a sound that made Amelia's jaw tighten. "You live here?" he asked, looking around at the expensive houses as if the idea was ridiculous. "Which house?" "I don't see how that's relevant to anything," Amelia responded, maintaining her calm tone. "I'm exercising on public sidewalks. I haven't broken any laws or done anything suspicious." Martinez stepped closer, and Amelia could see the skepticism in his eyes. "We've had reports of break-ins in this area recently," he said. "You match a description we received." "What description?" Amelia asked immediately, her legal mind engaging. She knew this was a common tactic, vague claims about matching descriptions that could apply to almost anyone. "Young black female, athletic build, dark hair," Thompson said, as if reading from a script. Amelia almost laughed at how generic the description was, but she knew this was no laughing matter. "That description could match thousands of women in this city," she said. "What specific crime am I suspected of committing?" The officers exchanged a look that Amelia didn't like. Martinez pulled out a small notepad, the kind police use to write tickets. "We're going to need to see some identification," he said. "I don't carry ID when I exercise," Amelia explained, gesturing to her athletic outfit that clearly had no pockets for a wallet. "I'm wearing running clothes, as you can see. Most people don't bring their purse on a jog." "That's convenient," Thompson muttered, and Amelia felt her patience beginning to wear thin. "There's nothing convenient about it," she said, her voice getting slightly firmer. "It's normal. People don't typically carry wallets when they go running." Martinez flipped open his notepad. "So you claim to live in this neighborhood, but you have no way to prove it?" "I never said I couldn't prove it," Amelia corrected him. "I said I don't carry ID while exercising. If you'd like to accompany me to my house, I'd be happy to show you my mail, My mortgage documents or any other proof you need. Which house? Thompson demanded again. Amelia hesitated for a moment. Part of her wanted to answer, to prove that she belonged here just as much as anyone else. But another part of her, the part that had studied constitutional law and defended people's rights, knew that she shouldn't have to prove anything. She was doing nothing wrong. Am I under arrest? She asked instead. Not yet, Martinez replied, and the threat in those two words was unmistakable. The morning around them was still peaceful. Birds were chirping in the oak trees, and somewhere in the distance she could hear a lawnmower starting up. It felt surreal to be having this conversation in such a tranquil setting, like something out of a bad dream. Look, Amelia said, trying a different approach. I understand you're just doing your job. But I'm a law-abiding citizen exercising in my own neighborhood. I'm happy to cooperate, but I also have rights. Rights? Thompson laughed. You're acting suspicious, refusing to identify yourself, giving us attitude. That gives us plenty of reason to detain you. I'm not giving you attitude, Amelia said, her professional training helping her stay calm even as her frustration grew. I'm exercising my constitutional rights. And I haven't refused to identify myself. I told you my name is Dr. Amelia Richardson, and I offered to show you proof of residence at my home. Doctor? Martinez asked, his eyebrows raising in what looked like disbelief. Yes, doctor. I have a law degree from Harvard University. The officers exchanged another look, and Amelia could almost see them calculating whether this changed anything for them. Unfortunately, it didn't seem to. Turn around and put your hands behind your back, Thompson said suddenly, reaching for his handcuffs. Excuse me? Amelia couldn't hide her shock. On what grounds? Suspicious behavior, failure to cooperate with a police investigation, possible trespassing, Martinez rattled off as if he had memorized the list. This is ridiculous, Amelia said, but she could see that the situation was escalating beyond reason. I am cooperating. I've answered your questions. I'm standing here talking to you instead of continuing my run. What more do you want? A car drove by slowly, the driver clearly curious about what was happening. Amelia noticed a woman across the street had come out to get her newspaper and was watching the scene unfold. Good, she thought. Witnesses. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to turn around now, Thompson said, his hand moving to his handcuffs. I want to see your supervisor, Amelia said firmly. This is harassment and you both know it. You'll get your phone call when we get to the station, Martinez replied. My phone call? Amelia felt a surge of anger and disbelief. You're actually going to arrest me for jogging in my own neighborhood? More people were starting to notice the commotion. A man walking his dog had stopped to watch, and someone in a house across the street had opened their window. Amelia was embarrassed, but she was also glad that people were witnessing what was happening. Last chance, Thompson said, moving toward her with the handcuffs. Turn around voluntarily or we'll turn you around. Amelia looked at both officers, seeing the determination in their faces. She realized that they had already made up their minds about her, probably from the moment they saw her jogging through their neighborhood. Nothing she said or did was going to change their minds now, but she also knew something they didn't know yet. She knew exactly who she was, what she was capable of, and what resources she had at her disposal. This wasn't going to end the way they thought it was. Officers, she said clearly, making sure her voice would carry to the growing number of witnesses. My name is Dr. Amelia Richardson. I am a civil rights attorney with the Civil Rights Defense League. I live at 847 Oak Avenue in this neighborhood. I am recording this conversation on my smartwatch, and I want everyone watching to note that I am fully cooperating with these officers while they attempt to arrest me for the crime of exercising while black. The expression on Martinez's face shifted slightly, the first crack in his confident demeanor, but Thompson either didn't hear her or didn't care, because he kept advancing with the handcuffs. That's when Mrs. Patterson appeared, walking quickly across the street with a determined look on her face that Amelia had never seen before. Mrs. Patterson moved faster than Amelia had ever seen the 72-year-old woman move before. Her gray hair was still in curlers and she was wearing a floral bathrobe over her pajamas, but her face showed a determination that could have stopped traffic. What in the world is going on here? Mrs. Patterson demanded, positioning herself between Amelia and Officer Thompson. Despite being barely 5 feet tall, she somehow managed to look intimidating. Ma'am, please step back, Martinez said, clearly not expecting this interruption. This is police business. Police business? Mrs. Patterson's voice rose with indignation. This young lady lives right down the street from me. Her name is Dr. Richardson, and she's been my neighbor for 6 months. What possible police business could you have with someone jogging in their own neighborhood? Thompson looked frustrated by the interference. Ma'am, we're investigating reports of suspicious activity in the area. Suspicious activity? Mrs. Patterson laughed, but there was no humor in it. The only suspicious activity I see is 2 police officers harassing a woman for exercising. Dr. Richardson jogs past my house every single morning at exactly 6:30. She waves to me when I'm watering my roses. She helped me carry groceries last month when my arthritis was acting up. Amelia felt a wave of gratitude toward her neighbor. She had always liked Mrs. Patterson, but she had never expected the older woman to stand up for her like this. More neighbors were emerging from their houses now. David Chen from 3 houses down was walking over with his coffee mug still in hand. Behind him, Jennifer and Robert Williams were approaching, both still in their work clothes from their night shifts at the hospital. "Is everything okay here?" David asked, looking confused by the scene. "These officers are trying to arrest Dr. Richardson for jogging," Mrs. Patterson explained, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had been the unofficial neighborhood watch coordinator for over 2 decades. "Arrest her for jogging?" Jennifer Williams looked shocked. "That's insane. She jogs every morning. I see her when I'm coming home from my shift." Officer Martinez was starting to look uncomfortable as more neighbors gathered. This wasn't going the way he had planned. "We received reports of break-ins in the area," he repeated, but his voice lacked the confidence it had carried earlier. "What break-ins?" David Chen pulled out his phone. "I'm on the neighborhood watch group chat. We haven't had any reports of break-ins in months." He scrolled through his messages. "Look, here's our group chat from this week. Dr. Richardson is listed as a member. She joined when she moved in, just like everyone else." Amelia watched as the officer's confidence continued to crumble. What they didn't know was that she recognized them both. Officer Martinez had been named in 2 complaints filed by her law firm in the past year. Officer Thompson had been the subject of a formal investigation after an incident similar to this one just 6 months ago. "Officers," Amelia said calmly, "I need to inform you that this entire interaction is being recorded on my smartwatch. I also need to let you know that I am the lead attorney for the Civil Rights Defense League, and I specialize in exactly these types of cases." The color drained from Thompson's face. Martinez's hand moved away from his handcuffs. "You might recognize my name from the news," Amelia continued, her voice remaining professional despite the anger she felt. "Last month, I won a settlement against the Metro Police Department for racial profiling. 3 weeks ago, I secured a federal court ruling against the county sheriff's office for similar behavior. And just last week, I filed a class action lawsuit on behalf of 15 people who were unlawfully detained for looking suspicious in their own neighborhoods." Robert Williams was recording everything on his phone now. "Dr. Richardson, you're that lawyer who was on the news? The one who won all those big cases?" "Yes," Amelia confirmed, never taking her eyes off the 2 officers. "And officers, I need to inform you that your badge numbers are 4847 and 6291. And this interaction is now evidence in an ongoing federal investigation into discriminatory policing practices in this city." Mrs. Patterson crossed her arms and glared at the officers. "Well, I hope you boys are proud of yourselves. You've just harassed one of the most respected lawyers in the state, in her own neighborhood, while she was exercising." Martinez tried to salvage the situation. "Ma'am, we were just responding to a call. If there was a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding." Amelia's professional composure finally cracked slightly. "You followed me for 6 blocks, questioned my right to be in my own neighborhood, demanded identification, threatened to arrest me, and attempted to handcuff me. What part of that was a misunderstanding?" "We were just doing our job," Thompson said weakly. "No," David Chen interjected, still recording on his phone. "Your job is to protect and serve. This isn't protection, and it sure isn't service." Jennifer Williams stepped forward. "Dr. Richardson, I'm so sorry this happened to you. This is not who we are as a community." "Actually," Amelia said, her lawyer instincts taking over, "this is exactly who we are as a community. This happens every day to people who don't have law degrees or neighbors willing to stand up for them. The only difference is that I have the knowledge and resources to fight back." A small crowd had gathered now, and Amelia could see people recording on their phones from windows and doorsteps. Good, she thought. The more witnesses, the better. Officer Martinez made one last attempt to control the narrative. Dr. Richardson, we apologize for any inconvenience. We'll file a report noting that this was a case of mistaken identity. Mistaken identity? Amelia laughed, but there was no humor in it. Officer Martinez, you've been named in complaints by my firm before. You know exactly who I am and what I do for a living. This wasn't mistaken identity. This was racial profiling, and we both know it. Thompson was fidgeting with his radio, probably hoping for backup or instructions from his supervisor. Martinez looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. Here's what's going to happen, Amelia continued, her voice taking on the authoritative tone she used in courtrooms. You're going to return to your vehicle and leave. I'm going to finish my jog. And tomorrow morning, my office will be filing a complaint with Internal Affairs, the mayor's office, and the Department of Justice. Ma'am, I don't think that's necessary. Martinez tried. Officer Martinez, Mrs. Patterson interrupted. I think you've done quite enough. I suggest you take Dr. Richardson's advice and leave before you make this any worse for yourselves. The two officers looked at each other, clearly realizing they had stepped into something much bigger than they had anticipated. They had expected to intimidate a lone jogger, not confront a civil rights attorney surrounded by supportive neighbors and multiple cameras. We'll be going now, Martinez said finally. Dr. Richardson, again, we apologize for any misunderstanding. Save your apologies for the court, Amelia replied. You'll need them there. As the officers walked back to their car, tails between their legs, Amelia felt a mix of emotions. She was angry, embarrassed, and frustrated, but she was also determined. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about every person who had been in her situation without the resources to fight back. The police car pulled away, and the neighbors began to disperse, but not before each of them offered their support and contact information as witnesses. Mrs. Patterson was the last to leave, giving Amelia a hug that felt like a grandmother's embrace. You handled that beautifully, dear, the older woman said. Now you make them pay for their ignorance. As Amelia finally continued her jog, her mind was already working on the legal strategy. This wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. By the time Amelia reached her office 3 hours later, her phone had been buzzing nonstop. She had barely walked through the door when her assistant, Patricia, rushed over with a stack of message slips and a concerned expression. Dr. Richardson, your phone has been ringing off the hook, Patricia said. The video is everywhere. What video? Amelia asked, though she had a sinking feeling she already knew. Patricia pulled up her computer screen and showed Amelia a video that had been posted on social media. It was the footage from Robert Williams's phone, showing the entire confrontation with the police officers. The video had been shared thousands of times in just a few hours, and the comments were pouring in. The local news stations have been calling, Patricia continued. Channel 7 wants to do an interview this afternoon. The mayor's office called twice, and you have about 50 emails from people wanting to share their own stories about police harassment. Amelia sat down at her desk and watched the video play out on the screen. It was surreal seeing herself from an outside perspective, watching the way the officers had approached her with such hostility. But what struck her most was how calm and professional she had remained throughout the entire ordeal. Even when they threatened to arrest her, her law partner, Jonathan Rivers, knocked on her office door and entered without waiting for permission. Amelia, are you okay? I just saw the video. I'm fine, she replied, though she wasn't entirely sure that was true. Angry, but fine. This is huge, Jonathan said, pulling up a chair. The video has been picked up by national news outlets. CNN wants to interview you. The American Civil Liberties Union called to offer support. And the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division wants to include this in their ongoing investigation of the police department. Amelia leaned back in her chair, feeling overwhelmed. She had handled cases like this before, but she had never been the victim herself. It was different when it was personal, when it was your own dignity that had been attacked on a public street. There's more, Jonathan continued. We've been contacted by 12 other people today who say they've had similar experiences with those same two officers. Apparently, this isn't an isolated incident. That got Amelia's attention. 12 people? And counting. Patricia has been taking calls all morning from people who saw the video and recognized the officers. Martinez and Thompson apparently have quite a reputation in certain neighborhoods. Amelia's phone rang again, and Patricia's voice came through the intercom. Dr. Richardson, I have the chief of police on line 1. He says it's urgent. Put him through, Amelia said, switching to speakerphone so Jonathan could hear. Dr. Richardson, this is Chief Williams. I want to personally apologize for this morning's incident. Chief Williams, Amelia replied, her voice cool and professional. I appreciate your call, but I think we both know this goes far beyond a simple apology. I understand your frustration, the chief said. I've already launched an internal investigation into the officers' conduct. They've been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome. That's a start, Amelia said. But Chief, this video shows behavior that suggests a pattern of discriminatory policing. My office has been contacted by multiple people today who report similar experiences with these same officers. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Dr. Richardson, I'd like to meet with you in person to discuss this situation. Would you be available this afternoon? I'll have my assistant schedule something, Amelia replied. But Chief, I want you to understand that this isn't going away quietly. This is exactly the kind of behavior that my firm fights against every day. I understand, the chief said, and I want to work with you to make sure it doesn't happen again. After hanging up, Amelia turned to Jonathan. What do you think? I think he's scared, Jonathan replied. This video makes his department look terrible, and he knows it. But Amelia, this could be bigger than just those two officers. This could be the case that finally forces real change in how police interact with communities. Amelia's computer chimed with another email notification. She glanced at the screen and saw messages from reporters, civil rights organizations, and ordinary citizens sharing their own stories. One subject line caught her attention. Thank you for standing up for all of us. She opened the email and read, Dr. Richardson, I'm a teacher in the same neighborhood where you were harassed this morning. Last year I was stopped 3 times in 1 month while walking to my car after work. Each time the officers demanded to know what I was doing in the area, even though I've worked at the elementary school for 8 years. I never reported it because I thought no one would believe me. Thank you for showing me that we don't have to accept this treatment. Amelia felt tears welling up in her eyes. This was why she had become a civil rights lawyer in the first place, to give a voice to people who felt powerless against injustice. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Mrs. Patterson. Dear, I just wanted you to know that I called every person in my book club and told them what happened. We're all behind you 100%. Those officers picked the wrong person to mess with. Give them hell. Your friend, Eleanor. Amelia smiled despite everything. Mrs. Patterson was apparently more of a fighter than she had realized. Over the next few hours, the story continued to grow. The video had been viewed over 1 million times, and tourist jogging while black was trending on social media. News trucks were parking outside Amelia's office building, and reporters were calling for interviews. But the most significant call came at 4 p.m. It was from the FBI Civil Rights Division. Dr. Richardson, this is Agent Sarah Mitchell with the FBI. We've been investigating allegations of civil rights violations by members of the Metro Police Department. Today's incident fits a pattern we've been tracking, and we'd like to include it in our federal investigation. What kind of pattern? Amelia asked. We have documentation of over 30 incidents in the past 2 years involving officers Martinez and Thompson specifically. All involve people of color being stopped, questioned, or detained for what can only be described as existing in public spaces. Your case is unique because of your profession and the fact that it was recorded, but the behavior is consistent with reports we've received from other victims. Amelia felt a chill run down her spine. 30 incidents. How many people had been humiliated, frightened, or worse by these officers while the department looked the other way? Agent Mitchell, my firm would be happy to cooperate with your investigation. We've been contacted by multiple victims today who are willing to come forward. That would be extremely helpful, Agent Mitchell replied. Dr. Richardson, I know this was a traumatic experience for you personally, but your willingness to speak out could help us build a case that protects countless other people from similar treatment. After ending the call, Amelia sat quietly in her office for a few minutes. When she had started her morning jog, she had been thinking about her legal arguments for the case she was handling this week. She never could have imagined that by evening, she would be at the center of a federal civil rights investigation. Jonathan poked his head into her office. The Channel 7 news crew is here. Are you ready for the interview? Amelia straightened her blazer and checked her reflection in the window. She thought about all the people who had called that day, sharing their own stories of harassment and discrimination. She thought about Mrs. Patterson standing up to two police officers in her bathrobe and curlers. She thought about her neighbors who had supported her without question. "I'm ready," she said. "Let's make sure this never happens to anyone else." As she walked toward the conference room where the interview would take place, Amelia realized that this morning's humiliation was about to become something much more powerful. It was going to become a catalyst for change. 6 months later, Amelia stood in the same spot where the officers had tried to humiliate her. But everything was different now. Instead of the quiet morning street she remembered, Oak Avenue was filled with hundreds of people participating in the first annual Community Unity Walk. Children carried handmade signs, neighbors walked arm in arm, and even some police officers were participating, though they were very different officers from the ones she had encountered that morning. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind of legal proceedings, media interviews, and community organizing. The federal investigation had moved quickly once other victims came forward. Officer Thompson had been terminated within 2 weeks of the incident, after investigators discovered a pattern of discriminatory behavior that stretched back to his academy days. Officer Martinez faced suspension, mandatory retraining, and was transferred to a desk job pending further review. But the individual officers were just the beginning. The real victory came when the city agreed to implement comprehensive police reform, including mandatory bias training, body cameras for all officers, and a civilian oversight board with real authority to investigate complaints and recommend discipline. "Dr. Richardson, could you say a few words to kick off the walk?" asked Rachel Torres, the president of the Neighborhood Association. Rachel had become one of Amelia's closest allies in the fight for police accountability, helping to organize community meetings and gather petition signatures. Amelia took the microphone and looked out at the diverse crowd that had gathered. She saw Mrs. Patterson, now wearing a t-shirt that read, "Neighbors supporting neighbors," and carrying a small American flag. David Chen was there with his entire family, including his teenage daughter who had written an essay about the incident for her civics class. Jennifer and Robert Williams had brought their colleagues from the hospital, and even some of Amelia's former clients had made the trip to show their support. 6 months ago, I was stopped and questioned by police officers for the crime of jogging while black in my own neighborhood, Amelia began, her voice carrying clearly in the crisp morning air. At the time, it felt like a personal attack, a moment of humiliation that I just wanted to forget. She paused, looking around at the faces in the crowd. But what I learned that day, and in the months that followed, is that change doesn't happen when we suffer in silence. Change happens when we stand up, speak out, and demand better, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who comes after us. The crowd applauded, and Amelia continued. The officers who harassed me thought they were targeting someone who would be too scared or powerless to fight back. They didn't count on Mrs. Patterson in her bathrobe and curlers, ready to take on anyone who messed with her neighbor. They didn't count on David Chen and his neighborhood watch group chat. They didn't count on the Williams family recording everything on their phones. They didn't count on a community that believes in justice. More applause. And Amelia saw several people wiping away tears. Today, we walk together not just to celebrate how far we've come, but to commit to going further. The settlement money from our lawsuit has established the Community Justice Fund, which provides free legal representation to anyone who experiences police misconduct. We've created a civilian oversight board that actually has the power to hold officers accountable, and we've implemented training programs that teach police officers to see community members as neighbors, not threats. As the crowd began to move, starting their walk through the neighborhood, Amelia fell into step beside Mrs. Patterson. The older woman had become something of a local celebrity after the video went viral, giving interviews about the importance of neighbors standing up for each other. "You know, dear," Mrs. Patterson said as they walked, "I've lived in this neighborhood for 43 years. I've seen it change a lot over the decades, but I've never been prouder of this community than I am today." They passed the spot where officers Martinez and Thompson had tried to arrest Amelia. Someone had placed a small plaque there that read, "Here, neighbors stood together for justice. May we always have the courage to do what's right." As the walk continued, Amelia found herself talking with people whose lives had been touched by the changes that followed her encounter. There was Linda Washington, a teacher who had been repeatedly stopped while walking to her car after work, until the new Civilian Oversight Board investigated and disciplined the officer responsible. There was Michael Torres, a teenager who had been harassed for skateboarding in his own neighborhood until the new community policing. Protocols required officers to engage positively with young people instead of treating them as automatic suspects. The most meaningful encounter came when they reached Riverside Elementary School, where a group of students had created an art installation about justice and community. One of the students, a 10-year-old named Asia, approached Amelia with a drawing. "I made this for you," Asia said shyly, handing over a picture that showed people of all different colors holding hands around a neighborhood. "My mom says you helped make our community safer." Amelia knelt down to Asia's level. "Thank you for this beautiful picture. But you know what? I didn't do this alone. Your neighbors helped. Your teachers helped. Even some good police officers helped. When communities work together, amazing things can happen." As the walk concluded back at the starting point, Amelia was approached by Captain Rodriguez, the new head of community policing for the district. Captain Rodriguez had been brought in specifically to rebuild trust between the police and the community, and she had made it a priority to attend community events and listen to residents' concerns. "Dr. Richardson, I wanted to thank you again for your patience as we've worked to implement these changes," Captain Rodriguez said. "I know it hasn't been easy, and I know there's still work to do. But the relationship between our officers and this community is stronger than it's been in years." "Thank you, Captain," Amelia replied. "The officers I've met through the new community policing program are exactly the kind of people who should be wearing the badge. They understand that their job is to protect and serve everyone, not to intimidate and control." As the crowd began to disperse, Amelia received a text message that made her smile. It was from a law student at her alma mater. "Dr. Richardson, I saw your story on the news last year and it inspired me to focus my studies on civil rights law. I just got accepted to intern with the ACLU this summer. Thank you for showing me that one person really can make a difference." Walking back toward her house, Amelia reflected on everything that had changed. The settlement from her lawsuit had been substantial, but more important than the money was the systemic change it had brought about. The Civilian Oversight Board had already investigated 15 complaints and recommended discipline in 8 cases. The mandatory bias training program was being copied by police departments in other cities, and the Community Justice Fund had provided legal representation to dozens of people who never would have been able to afford a lawyer otherwise. Her phone buzzed with another message, this one from Jonathan at the law firm. "Amazing turnout today." Also, the Department of Justice called. "They want to use our case as a model for a new national program on police accountability. Congratulations, counselor. You're changing the world." As Amelia reached her front door, she noticed Mrs. Patterson working in her rose garden. The older woman looked up and waved, the same friendly gesture she had given every morning for the past 6 months. "Same time tomorrow for your jog?" Mrs. Patterson called out. "Absolutely," Amelia called back, "though I don't expect any excitement this time." "Oh, I don't know," Mrs. Patterson replied with a mischievous grin. "I kind of enjoyed putting those officers in their place. Best excitement I've had in years." Amelia laughed and went inside to change into her running clothes. Tomorrow morning, she would jog the same route she had been running that day 6 months ago. But now, instead of being followed by suspicious police officers, she would be greeted by neighbors who knew her name, children walking to school who waved when they saw her, and police officers who understood that their job was to protect everyone in the community. As she laced up her running shoes, Amelia thought about all the people who had been part of this journey. The brave neighbors who spoke up when it mattered. The dedicated journalists who told the story fairly. The committed activists who organized for change. The honest police officers who wanted to do better. And the countless community members who proved that when people stand together, justice is possible. The morning sun was setting now, casting long shadows across her bedroom. Tomorrow would bring a new day, a new jog, and a new opportunity to appreciate how far they had all come. But tonight, Amelia Richardson went to sleep knowing that she lived in a community where everyone had the right to exercise safely, where neighbors looked out for each other, and where justice wasn't just an ideal, it was a reality they had built together. The story that began with 2 officers trying to humiliate a woman for jogging while black had become a story about the power of community, the importance of standing up for what's right, and the possibility of real change when people refuse to accept injustice. And every morning,